Okay, guys, so this is kind of the second part of your notes from last time, the 1.2 notes, evaluating and simplifying expressions. This is on page 2 in your journal. We talked about evaluating last class period, and that just means to plug in, and that happens whenever we're working with expressions because there is no equal sign on an expression. And then solving is something we're going to do a little bit later in this unit, and that's when we actually have to find the value before we can plug it in anywhere. So the beauty of what we learned last time was instead of having to solve, they actually already found the values for these numbers for us. So what we did was we took these values, plugged them into wherever they belonged, and we evaluated to get these answers down here. Now, the other thing we talked about last time was how we can use the test to take the test. So we realized that it said which equation represents the table below. Therefore, we used this table they provided us. We used our y equals screen, typed in each of these equations, and found which table correlated with our y equals screen. We did kind of the same thing on number 5, but we took this y equals equation, we plugged it into our y equals screen, and then pressed second and table to get to the matching table right here. Again, remember I said that those check marks are good enough for you as work because you are showing me that you verified it within your calculator. So to start on the back side of these notes, we're going to talk about simplifying expressions. So we're not going to have to evaluate anything anymore. We're just going to make something as simple as we can. So looking at number 1, it says find the perimeter of each figure. So we have to know what perimeter means. And the word itself tells you what it means, which is nice. But our perimeter is when we find the rim of the shape. Therefore, we're going to add up all the sides. So add sides. The only thing that's different about these perimeters than the perimeters you're used to is the fact that they have some variables in there. So when we add up sides and it deals with variables, we can only add x's with x's and y's with y's. The problem here is, though, they only provided us 2 sides, so we're going to have to fill in the other sides. I like to go in here because this does count as work, and I will actually put the opposite side and rewrite it. Again, opposite side, and I'm going to rewrite it so that I can see that all 4 sides are now labeled, and I can work from there. There are 2 ways to approach this problem. One of them is very similar to 4th grade, which I know we all loved 4th grade and 5th grade math. So what you do there is you kind of add up like you would a normal addition problem, but you line up everything that looks alike. So 2x plus 3y did that side. So I'm going to move on to this next side, and I'm going to line up my x's. So 3x plus 2y. And I've finished that side. Now I'm going to do the other 2. We've got 3x plus 2y again. And then the last side is 2x plus 3y. And this is literally like 4th grade math. We're not going to ever change our x and our y's whenever we're combining like terms. So we're just going to bring that x straight down, that y straight down. And the only thing we work with are the big numbers. So therefore, we're going to say 2 plus 3 plus 3 plus 2. And then we're going to say 3 plus 2 plus 2 plus 3. So 2 plus 3 is 5, plus 3 more is 8, plus 2 more is 10. And then we've got 3 plus 2 is 5, plus 2 more is 7, plus 3 more is 10. The only thing we have to remember, though, guys, is you have to remember what type of 10 that is because we do have to separate our 2 terms by bringing this plus sign down. Okay? If it was a negative 10, that plus sign would become a minus. So looking at number 2, I'm going to show you a different way to do this problem. Okay? It's kind of the same The only thing is we're not going to fourth grade as often. What we are going to do is we're again going to add up all of these sides, but we're going to take it one term at a time. So we've got 5.7x. I'm going to look around for any more x's, and I see one more. So I'm going to say 5.7x and 2.9x. And those are going to add to be, well, I'm going to bring down my x, of course. And those are going to add to be 8.6x. But I'm not done because I haven't completed with all of my terms. So now I'm going to go back and I'm going to do a different color because that's how I work. I've got 4.6y and another y right here. This term's already done. So I've got 4.6y, but it's a negative 2.4y. So when I put those together, it's like a subtraction problem. I'm going to bring down my y still. 6 minus 4 is 2. 4 minus 2 is 2. So that is a positive 2.2y. And then last but not least, I'm going to work with just the constants that are sitting over here by themselves. We've got a positive 4.1 and a positive 3.2. That's going to be 7.3. But my final answer has to put all these terms back together. So I'm going to start in alphabetical order. X's are going to come first. My answer is going to say 8.6x plus 2.2y plus 7.3 because all the remaining coefficients are positive numbers. So using either of those methods, you can do the next problem on your own. The only thing you do have to figure out is the fact that the question is asking you to find the sum of both perimeters. Meaning instead of just adding up 4 sides, I'm now going to be adding up 8. So I'm going to kind of go through this without talking you through it. I am going to label both sides again because that's just how I work. You don't have to work the same way as me. That's fine as long as we both get to the same answer. And I'm going to do it the second way where I combine the terms that look alike. But you do have to be careful when you do this. You can't miss a term. So we've got a 4x. And then this other x. There's an understood coefficient of 1 out here because it's standing by itself. Another coefficient of 1. A 4. A 5. An 8. A 5, and an 8. Now, my classes last time wanted to do one rectangle at a time, so that's going to kind of be what I do, but then I'm going to check my answer. So I've got a 4, a 4, a 1, and a 1 to give me 10 x's here. And then I've got an 8, a 5, and a 5 to give me 26 x's here. Then I'm going to go work with my y's. Sorry this is taking so long. I've just got to change colors. I've got a positive 3y and then a negative 3y. So those cancel each other. I've got another negative, but another positive. So all those ended up canceling each other. Therefore, I have nothing or 0 y's. I don't write y there because if I write a y by itself, it's kind of like when this x was by itself, I would think there's a 1. So you can say plus 0, or you can just leave it blank, whatever you prefer. Now on this next rectangle, I've got some y's standing by themselves. So there's 1, and I've got a negative 6 plus 1, a negative 6 plus another 1, which ends up being negative 10 y's. But I can't stop there because the original problem told me that I had to find the sum of both perimeters. So I would then add these two together to give me an ending total of 36 x's minus 10 y's. And that is your final answer because that's as simple as it comes. You can't combine an x with a y, so they have to be separate. Now talk about simplifying expressions that just have one variable, but maybe some decimals in there and maybe some fractions. What I want you to do is I want you to understand we don't panic about decimals or fractions. All we do is we utilize our calculator. Okay? So what I'm going to start with is the alphabet. So anything that has a letter in it, I always start with that first. We've got a negative 4x and a negative 3x. Notice I always use the sign to the left to tell me what type it is. If you can't do this in your head, don't be afraid of that. Go ahead and just get into your calculator. Clear out what's there. Okay, and I had a negative 4 and a negative 3. My answer is going to be negative 7. But another way to type that, guys, is negative 4 minus 3. It's going to get you to the same answer, and they mean the same thing. So on this problem, I have negative 7x's. And then I'm also going to work with the constants. Even though they have decimals, I'm not going to panic. I've got a positive 9 out here, a positive 6.2, and a positive 10.1. So again, I could go in my calculator or I could do it by hand over here if y'all like to do that. I'm not the human that likes to do things by hand when I can use my calculator, but I am fine if you want to. Okay, so I think our answer should be 25.3, but let's go double check ourselves. We've got 9, 6.2, and 10.1. 9 plus 6.2 plus 10.1. Enter. 25.3. And that's a positive 25.3. It doesn't have x's in it, so I've got to make sure I separate those two terms. And there is my final answer. There's nothing else to simplify. My x's are all together, and then my constants are all together. Now, this next problem is going to be something you remember from 8th grade. It's called distributing because it has some parentheses in the problem. These parentheses here indicate that this negative 2/5 is being multiplied to everything inside. So I've got a negative 2/5 times 5 and a negative 2/5 times 1. And the way you do this, guys, if you use your calculator, you always put fractions into parentheses, and that fixes everything that might go wrong with it. So I'm going to say parentheses, negative 2 divided by 5, because that's my fraction. And then I'm going to multiply it by 5, because that's what it was distributed as. My answer is going to be negative 2. So in my notes, it's negative 2, but this y comes along. I can't type in variables into this screen in my calculator. I don't want to type in variables into this screen in my calculator. I only do the big numbers in this screen always. The only screen I use variables is when I go into my y equals screen. So then my next problem was negative 2/5 multiplied by, I believe it was 1, positive 1. And my answer for that problem is going to give me a decimal. However, in my original problem, there were only fractions. So I'm going to go press math, enter, enter. And it's going to bring it back to a fraction for me. So my fraction for this problem is negative 2/5. Okay, now this 6/5 doesn't have to be distributed, so I'm going to bring it down. And this negative 13y doesn't have to be distributed either. This is the part where a lot of my students forget that we still have to distribute and then combine like terms to make it as simple as possible. So we're going to start with the alphabet first. We've got some y's, a negative 2 and a negative 13 are going to combine to be negative 15y. And then we've got some fractions or constants. So we've got negative 2/5 and positive 6/5. In my calculator, I'm going to put them in parentheses. Negative 2/5 plus 6/5. I'm going to press enter. It's going to give me a decimal. Again, my original problem started as fractions, so I got to get it back to a fraction. Math, enter, enter. And there's my answer, 4/5. It was a positive 4/5. Therefore, there's my final answer. I've got y's, I've got constants, but nothing that can still be combined. These last ones are very, very simple. It looks like I don't have the notes all written down, so let me go grab one real fast. This top number looks to be minus 56W, so let me fill that in. I apologize. But something we talked about the other day, we did quotient. Quotient means to divide. So these are actually already being divided because they're in fraction format, which is awesome. But because there is this minus sign, it could also be an addition sign, so don't panic if it ever changes. Okay? Because there is a minus sign right here, that tells me that I've got to divide both of these sides to get my one answer. So Coach Williams calls this "don't break my heart." Whenever you see a minus sign in the middle or an addition sign in the middle, that means you got to do this part first. 72 divided by 8, which happens to be 9. And then you do the second part, which is the second part of the heart, which is negative 56W divided by 8. I believe that's negative 7. But don't forget the W. Don't leave the W behind. If you want to check this, you can check the big numbers in your calculator. So you could say, what was it? 72 divided by 9. Did I do that wrong? Oh, sorry. 72 divided by 8, which is ultimately going to give you 9. And then we've got negative 56 divided by 8. So you can always do the big numbers. That's negative 7. Your answer should be 9 minus 7, and then bring down that W. Okay, last problem on these notes, and we're done. And then you can get started on the around the world, but I am going to give you a hint if you've listened this far. Okay, I'm going to give you some stuff to take care of. I got to change pens real fast. Okay, again, it's quotient, so I'm going to start with the left side, and I'm going to say 75B divided by negative 5. If you're not comfortable with that, do it in your calculator always. Your answer is negative 15. You've got negative 15, but you bring down your B. And it's don't break my heart. There's two sides to the heart, so don't forget it. We've got a negative 50 divided by negative 5, which ends up being a positive 10. Therefore, there is my answer. So those of you that have listened this whole way, I'm actually going to give you a hint on the around the world. Remember, the sub is going to give you this paper right here. You're going to need to put you and your partner's name on it in this group name section. And this is going to be where you show your work. These are the problems that are actually underneath the flap of the pink things around the room. So when you open up a flap, you're going to see which problem to work on. And we're just going to do one together so that we all feel comfortable with this. We're going to do this top left one together. So this is distributing because there's parentheses there. That means I've got to distribute it twice. I go over the plus sign. So 4 times 3x is going to give me a total of 12x. Please don't forget your variable. And then 4 times 2 is going to give me a positive 8. Don't forget the y. The next thing you need to do, you need to check to make sure that there is nothing that can be combined together. And there's an x, there's a y. Those can't be combined together. Therefore, your answer is 12x plus 8y. You'll look around the room. You'll look to see if you can find 12x plus 8y on top. And it looks like that answer is on the back wall in the top green section. So that's the next problem you would go over there. You'd flip that flap up. You'd look to see which problem you need to be working now. And then you'd go back to your desk and start working with your partner. Thank y'all for being awesome. I'm proud of you. Please keep being good for the sub. I love you. Have a great day. Make smart choices.